Ahora inicia Fraude al Desnudo con Marta Cadavid. Transmisiones en vivo cada semana. Mira las transmisiones de nuevo en nuestras plataformas digitales. ¿Estás listo para aprender y compartir las mejores prácticas de la industria de administración de riesgos?
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por estar acá en una cápsula más de Fraude al Desnudo. Les habla Marta Cadavid desde la bella ciudad de Chicago. Y hoy con un invitado súper especial. Está aquí conmigo Tom Sep. Este programa lo vamos a cambiar a inglés porque Tom no habla español. Y es un placer tenerlo aquí porque vamos a hablar de un tema, vamos a hablar del onboarding de las contrapartes, porque él es un especialista en el tema. Entonces, a partir de este momento nos toca cambiar a inglés para poder compartir y hablar con Tom de esta experiencia que él tiene tan maravillosa en el sector financiero. Okay. Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for accepting my invite to be here in my program, Fraude al Desnudo, Naked Fraud, and it's a truly pleasure to have you here. And then after the introduction in Spanish, so everybody knows now that we are going to do this program in English. So welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. On these things, it's never good to start with an apology, but I do apologize for my lack of Spanish. It is on my to-do list to improve it.
No, don't worry about it. You know, it's something that when people talk to me about to be bilingual, of course, if Spanish as my first language, sometimes it's not perfect. Can you imagine English? So this is a journey, this is a process. So, but I always recommend to my colleagues in Latin America to jump to learn another language. And English is very important because they are wonderful material that we can use. Global standards, most of them come in English, and then so we can learn and share the best practices with people like you who only speak English. So it's on the other side. Thank you anyways. And then for our colleagues in Latin America, welcome to learn English. Okay, Tom. Before when we start the program, we were talking about you a little bit. So we are very curious to know who is Tom. As I explained to you, this is the point of inspiration. So tell us something about you and what can learn about you and your family, your career, and your fantastic time here in the United States.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm originally from the UK, Manchester, England. I moved to the United States in 2010 after college. I got a wonderful opportunity to work at Citibank. So I took that opportunity with both hands and moved to New York. And I actually met my wife on a subway in New York, which was spectacular. I know, no one can believe it. It's a true story.
Yes. Yeah. Excuse me, one moment, stop. I think it's the only good thing that I have heard about the subway in New York.
Yes, and that's probably a true story. Yeah. Yes, it's one of those glorious moments when the stars aligned and something nice happened. So I met my wife on a subway and married ever since. Well, not since that day, but we've been together ever since. And now got two wonderful children, a 7-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl. And live just outside of New York. And I come to the office in New York when I'm not traveling for work. So that's me. Another interesting thing, although I don't speak Spanish, I talk the language of soccer very well. So if anyone's listening and wants to have a discussion, perhaps heated, about the best soccer or football teams in the world, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so that's for many Latin American countries, this is universal language. So yes. Welcome to come to Colombia to watch the best soccer in the world. I'm sorry. But you know that we have wonderful players in Colombia, okay? So, Tom, we are going to talk about the onboarding of counterparties. We know that this is one of the biggest issues and FAT, which is the biggest organization that recommend. We had the 40 recommendations to implement the programs to prevent money laundering and financial crime in the corporations. Onboarding is one of the most important activities that we have to implement in the corporations. So I like that you talk about this because you have a lot of experience, and also about the issues that big corporations and startups and fintech are having now. Even if we have better technology, we had artificial intelligence, but it's what is happening about onboarding.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think it's a really interesting topic for a few reasons. One of those is what you just talked about, how effective onboarding is essential for organizations of all sizes and all maturity. We see fines handed out to the largest organizations, the largest banks, but this has ripple effects downstream as well, when these banks have to focus more on onboarding, making sure they're screening against sanctioned individuals, PEPs, to avoid bribery and corruption. That this then goes down to their fintechs or the people they're banking with. And so these entities now have to do much more prudent and resilient customer onboarding and screening. As well, we've got a moral imperative. The state of the world, sadly, there's still too much war, there's still too much bribery, still too much corruption. And as fintechs, as anyone involved in the financial world, we want to make sure we're not facilitating removement of money to people who are sanctioned, or businesses who are sanctioned, who are enabling this type of terrible terrorism, war, trafficking, etc.
Yes, that's very important to know that onboarding is a process that applies for each corporation. It doesn't matter the size. Mm-hmm. And even there are corporations which are not obligated to implement anti-money laundering programs. Is a good practice to have the onboarding process. In your experience, so which are the best practices in the onboarding process? So if I have a small company, really small company, and I want to have the process, what is the basic things? Tell us at least 3 basic things that we can just incorporate in the process of the onboarding.
Okay, good question. I think the first step, the foundational step, is always data. So it doesn't matter if your customers are businesses or individuals, you've got to make sure that you have good data on these customers, consistent. You've got to have their names, and if you're responsible for collecting other pieces of data, you've got to have it in a clean format and make sure that it's complete. Because if we don't have this, we can't do effective screening. Then it's implementing what we call like a risk-based approach, at looking at. You like those words?
Yes. That's for the third question. Okay. Go ahead.
So yeah, who are our customers, and are they all the same in terms of risk perspective? So do we need to look at some of them with more scope, look at some take more time examining the applications if I'm a small business? Potentially, maybe I'm a small business lender, and yes, I have some businesses which are in low risk fields, or some in high risk, such as jewelry, precious metals. Perhaps I want to look at the precious metals dealer with a greater lens than the company who is, low risk. I can't think of one now, but a low risk business. So that's 2 things. And the third thing is making sure that I'm using the latest data to compare my customers against. So if I have my customers here and that's all up to date and we've got all that data clean, I need to make sure that I'm using the latest data of sanctioned individuals, PEPs, from the sources. If I'm comparing against people who were listed as on terrorist watch lists from 18 months ago, there would be a lot of Hezbollah people who aren't on there. and we would be missing them and potentially, facilitating crime or illicit transactions if I didn't have that latest data.
Okay, so before to jump to the based risk approach, which is something that we had to explain to our audience. Sometimes when we talk about terrorism, when we talk about money laundering, when we talk about human trafficking, people believe that these horrible acts or crimes only happen in the high level, in the big banks or for big corporations. How a small company can be affected? Because this is what we need to understand, that terrorism, money laundering, fraud, human trafficking is everywhere. So in your experience, how big a small corporation can be attacked or how can be involved in these horrible acts?
Yeah, I think what's been proven is that if there is a way for these bad actors to get access to a financial world, it doesn't matter if you're small or big, if they can get access to you and launder money through you, they will. And it's been proven time and time again that criminals will exploit gaps in even the smallest businesses if they find a gap, if they find a way to launder money. So it doesn't matter if you're small or big, gaps will be seen and be taken advantage of.
Yeah, they take the opportunity. They look for people desperate for money, and they can introduce that money into small corporation. I think is much easier than in a big bank. That's why entrepreneurs, fintech, small companies, small organizations need to be aware about these magical people coming to the corporation, just to provide help or helping us with favors. And we think that they are very nice people, and it's totally opposite.
Yes.
They are compromising the company.
I think you make a really good point, especially for some of the startups who maybe, all they are interested in is user growth, revenue growth. It can be, I'm sure, tempting to sort of look the other way and not examine where these customers are coming from. Why are all these customers suddenly coming from one geographic area or all live in the same town? And it's really, if you do that, it's going to cost you down the road, either with fines or lost business relationship. If you rely on a bigger, larger bank, for example, a bank might cut ties with you. And then if one bank cuts ties with you, you can sure it's going to be a lot harder to get a new bank. And all that time, without your banking partner, you're cut off. And then your customers, the good ones, will leave. The bad ones will probably stay around.
Yeah, that's true. So let's talk about the risk-based approach. So, how we can apply the concept for the onboarding process?
So I think sort of to go back, it's who are we doing business with? Who are our customers? Taking a look at these customers and then grouping them by their level of perceived risk. And, we can go to the FATF and learn about, higher risk jurisdictions, higher risk individuals. So assigning a score potentially to these higher risk individuals or businesses. So that's sort of the first step. And then once we've identified a pool of customers or entities which have a higher risk, we give those entities in a high risk department more screening, potentially screen against more sources. We essentially have our more senior analysts or senior team members look at them. And perhaps we do Google searches, or we have good modern software to crawl the web and look for adverse media against these people, because oftentimes newspaper articles, posts on social media, for example, can be a great indicator that you should not be doing business with someone.
Yes. So I think today we have a lot of information outside, open source information, just to do the minimum thing.
Exactly.
To do the minimum thing. So years ago, it was many years ago, it was very difficult to find information about any client, any supplier, any counterparty, because the resources were minimum. But today, there is a lot of information that we can just to do the minimum thing. So if we want to put this process in the second level, we can buy a software, we can have an analyst, we can hire a company to help us to do the onboarding of the due diligence of the counterparty.
That's a great point. It's not expensive. If you are a small company just starting up, you can do this manually yourself. Once you get successful and you have more customers and you know what to do with, good. But you get software to automate this process and do the ongoing monitoring of your customers.
Oh, that's the another point. So let's talk about two things: monitoring and know your counterparty is one. This is what we're talking about. But know your business and know the business of your business. Because on June, I had the opportunity to be in Las Vegas in the ACF Global Conference. And there was a wonderful conference about how we need to know the suppliers or the vendors of our vendors. Because in order to avoid things like human trafficking, nowadays we need to ensure that our suppliers are doing the due diligence in the same way that we are doing it, or better. So it's not only to do the onboarding and the monitoring of my supplier, my vendor, is how my vendor is doing its due diligence in order to avoid this kind of issues too. So can you tell us also a little bit about this, how we improve the process to ensure that our vendors are doing the right thing too?
Yeah, and before, after those is know your customer's customer as well. So we've got a whole 360 degrees. So if we use an example, perhaps I'm a remittance company, and I'm a remittance company, and I allow people to send money to their home countries or from their home country to another country, whichever way it is, it doesn't matter. Not only is it important to know who my customer is, so let's just say I'm a web application, know a customer on my application, but also I have to screen the individual that they're sending money to. Because just because Marta is good, if Marta's sending Tom money and Tom's bad, well, me as a company, that's my responsibility to know. And if I know, then I can't do a transaction. So it's very important.
Yeah. So let's talk about monitoring, because one thing is onboarding. I always say is that it's like taking a picture. We take a picture today, the onboarding was good, but what happens in the future? Sometimes our suppliers or our clients or the counterparty in general change a lot.
Yes.
And we don't know. And then we compromise the safety and security of the company. So what we need to know about monitoring?
So I smile because when you said, I thought I heard you say tequila pitcher, like a pitcher of tequila. I thought that's a great analogy. When you have one tequila, it's okay, but a pitcher is too many. So.
Oh, no, that's amazing. I didn't know that example. Ooh, okay.
No, monitoring, right? I think you nailed it. So if just because my customer or my customer's customer is a good citizen today, and we don't have any negative news about them, we don't find them on any watch lists or judicial lists, it doesn't mean that in a week's time, in a year's time, in 5 years' time, that situation is the same. So it's important to do effective monitoring, and going back to a risk-based approach, but potentially you're doing, hourly monitoring, daily monitoring, or weekly monitoring. It's your business, and you've got to talk to, your compliance team, your risk teams, your lawyers about what's appropriate and where you are. But it's constant monitoring, but not, remember, it's monitoring against the latest data. So the latest data of individuals, or businesses which we shouldn't be doing business with.
Yes, I think we had to be careful and think, not because today we had the picture of this onboarding, the tax is done. So this is the beginning, because this is one of the most common questions. What is next? What I need to do next? That's the job, monitoring the counterparty.
One good thing, I'll say.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one positive aspect of doing this monitoring, imagine, again, your lending company, and you're monitoring Marta. Marta's day one, you give Marta a risk score of 60 out of 100. Over time, her risk score decreases because of numerous reasons. Perhaps now you allow Marta to get a larger loan, and you can earn more money from that loan. So we shouldn't always think about this compliance and thing in a negative, or it's going to cost my business money. It can also be a business enabler.
Yes. So what do you think about the onboarding of the employee?
That's so this is one where, you've got to know different countries, different regulations about what you can do. I know, for example, I think in Spain, it's doing pre-employment checks. It's very narrow what you're allowed to do and how far you can look. So of course, know your regulations where you are, and if you're hiring internationally, know regulations of where you're hiring. But I think, again, it depends on the role of the person you're hiring, how much you want to do at digging. But we've seen cases where banks have hired children of politicians, and got into a lot of trouble for this because they've been accused of bribery. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but the banks have paid the fines. So always, when you're employing, again, you've got to do your due diligence and do a screening and monitoring.
Yeah, this is another process that we have to be, how can I say it, to improve in many countries, is that when we talk about the counterparty, we include the employee. Not because it's an employee, except there is an exception of the rule or of the global standards. It's opposite. It's another counterparty. Of course, for any onboarding, we need to follow local regulations. And it is for employees, there are labor rules that we have to follow anyways, but we cannot forget that the employees carry risks for the companies too. And in fact, we have stories of people who have been hired in the companies, and then they were connected with high-level politicians, and then be part of a political party or be part of criminal groups, and then they are just taking information out of the company to attack the organization. So we had to be careful about this too.
Exactly. And, one of the sad things about what you're talking about is it impacts the countries with, perhaps, I don't know what correct words are, the countries with the most disruption right now. So Venezuela, for example, is a good example, where sadly the connected parties are getting the only ones who are operating, making money. And unfortunately, it's not feeding the many, it's feeding the few.
Yes, we agree. And I want to be clear, Tom. Despite this conversation sounds like a high level, like we are talking for big corporations, the biggest problems that we have now, I am talking about Latin America, and in fact, in small business in the United States, is that they are not following this process because they believe that they don't need it, because there is not a special regulation for a small business, or because the risk appetite is really high and they say, no, I prefer to wait. So, Tom, last questions. I want that people look for you in your social media. Can you just let us know where people can find you?
Yes, definitely. The best way is probably on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send me a message. If you want, if you're a small business and you want access to free resources where you can search for customers for free and see if they're on lists, happy to provide that. Also, some more formal guidelines on how to implement a risk-based approach, because something dear to my heart and your heart matter. So yes, LinkedIn's probably the best way.
Perfect. So people, please can look for Tom and LinkedIn. And after the video is the program ends, it's going to be just ready in our social media and Auditool social media as well. So Tom, please feel free to repost it and just add your information. Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. So thank you, Tom. I don't want to take more time because I know that your family in New York is waiting for you. It's dinner time. Thank you so much for being part of the program. And then we are looking for opportunities to do some events in Latin America. Yes. That's why we have the opportunity to talk to Tom and John. John will be with us on December 19th. He's going to close the year. So, and we are going to post the events and where they can find these wonderful people, because this financial crimes event help a lot to our audience. Okay, thank you, Tom, and see you soon.
See you. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience today.
Okay. Thank you. Muchas gracias a todos. Hoy tuvimos la oportunidad de hablar con Tom Eisner. Tom es un experto en todo el tema de onboarding y trabaja para una compañía que ayuda a las startups, fintech y pequeñas organizaciones a hacer este tipo de procesos. Me encanta porque este proceso, que puede ser a veces muy engorroso, él lo puede digerir de una manera muy diferente. Con Tom y John vamos a estar participando en algunos eventos relacionados a crímenes financieros acá en Estados Unidos y también en Latinoamérica. Así que muchas gracias a todos por conectarse hoy, a Auditool por ser el sponsor de este espacio, y nos vemos el próximo lunes en otra cápsula de Fraude al Desnudo. Recuerden compartir la información. Alguien la está necesitando. Thank you, Tom. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.